Welcome to another episode of the Relationship Toolbox, a show about the skills we need in our communication toolbox for better relationships with others. On our last show, we talked about conversations that went between couples that seemed to go nowhere and that often left the participants feeling resentful, angry, frustrated, and certainly not pleased with their relationship. And we discussed ways in which that can be corrected through the use of iMessages, restatement, problem solving, and a commitment to the relationship to try to be respectful and understand the other party, even when we are frustrated or unhappy with the other person. Today we are going to examine why many people feel unloved in their relationships. We're going to rely on the work of Gary Chapman, who has studied this and come up with a concept of love languages that we often do not understand and we miss with each other, leaving each other feeling kind of void of what we need most, and that is the love that we feel for each other. So Marsha, why don't we talk a little bit about what are these things called love languages that Chapman references?
Well, I should say first that you've read a lot more about it than I have, but from our conversations about Chapman's work, and it makes so much sense because a lot of what we do in conflict is about miscommunication. Yes. So you know, he's talking about just being on a different channel, speaking a completely different love language. You're on, it's like a different frequency, and that we have our preferred frequencies, and that we broadcast that to our partner, expecting that they're on the same frequency, and they may not be picking up on it because they're on a different channel. They're speaking a different language. Yes. I know sometimes when people aren't understanding a language, they just speak louder, and sometimes I think that's what we do in relationships. We just do what we typically do, only with more persuasion, but it could be completely missing the boat. It's natural to offer what it is we need, you know, kind of that old golden rule of treating people the way we want to be treated.
Sort of the way we see it, so why wouldn't they see it the same way?
But you know, it's more about maybe understanding what that other person needs and treating them in that way, and then showing them what we need. But it becomes a negotiation and a willingness to learn the other language, or at least speak the other language. So there are 5 different languages that Gary Chapman has identified, and these are the languages, the so-called love languages that he's identified. Offering words of affirmation is one, offering physical touch, doing acts of service, receiving gifts, and showing up and being present, offering quality time. So maybe we could go through and elaborate on those. Okay. And they're not in any kind of ranking or order. This is the way he delivers them in his research, but we're not saying that one is better or more appropriate. We all have our preferences, as we'll talk about soon. But so words of affirmation could be compliments, sincere words of devotion or appreciation, written or spoken or texted, or, you know, for example, writing a Post-it note and putting it on the mirror in the morning.
Sure.
You know, I appreciate you.
How much I care about you, and just a simple comment of how beautiful you look today. You look so great in that outfit.
Be careful with that one though, because you want to make sure that they think they always look lovely.
Right, yes.
Not just in that outfit, and not just today.
So even a compliment such as, I don't know how you do this, it's amazing to me, is a validation of the person. I don't know what I would do without you, is another form. I can't believe after all these years how much I still love you. Thank you for being there for me. These are just things that we often don't say, so that can be a problem by itself. But if that is the main means by which that person receives messages of love, and they don't hear that kind of thing at all because it's not the way we usually do that, then we can really leave them with a real void and empty. Yes.
And it's either spoken or written evidence of the devotion, the love.
Correct.
And they might be just so thirsty and so hungry for this. And the other person may be talking in another language saying, of course I care, I'm showing you.
Right.
But if it's not in the way that person needs to have it, needs to receive it, then it's a problem.
It doesn't register.
Yeah.
And Chapman refers to this as sort of driving with an empty gas tank, that when that needle is indicating empty and we're still driving, we're always anxious about, are we going to make it? Can we, how far can we go on this? And if that's our experience day after day, after a while, that relationship is not very fulfilling. So that love tank needs to be filled, or at least half full, all the time.
To have the resilience to weather the times when the other partner is needy, you've got to have your
That's right.
your
and that's
tank
another
filled
thing that Chapman points out, is that if that love tank is sufficiently full, then when times of crisis come up, or the inevitable differences that we have and arguments, we approach them much differently, because we're already feeling loved and cared for. So now we can concentrate more on what's happening with you. Yeah,
right, and
how
not
can
be
I
so
help?
defensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we moved on to physical touch, now there are lots of variations and gradations of physical touch. It
Absolutely.
could be a warm embrace, it could be a welcoming or departing kiss, it could be a hand on a shoulder or back, neck rub, back rub, or it could be sexual intimacy.
Yes.
When it's a mutually satisfying experience.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if someone is craving for that type of experience and the other party doesn't recognize it and doesn't give that, again, the love tank empties with it. So it's important to know that with someone, and to be able to give the expressions of love in that manner, if that's important to them.
To the other person, yeah.
To the
It
other
may
person.
not be the way you thrive or starve for it, but you have to be aware that that's what the other person needs.
Correct.
So now we're looking at acts of service.
Right.
So these would be tasks that would be above or beyond, or not part of the typical repertoire.
Maybe it could be just taking over.
Or lifting the burden of somebody. It's like, I know that you normally do this, but how I know that I would like to do this for you today. Either deliberately or just doing it without a lot of fanfare.
Or thanks for cleaning up the dishes without my even asking for it.
Yeah.
With a thanks for taking my car out to get the oil changed, when that just saves me having to do all that.
Yeah. I know that you've been on your feet all day. How about if I, do the dishes, or take the dog for the walk tonight, or whatever. Just it's an unsolicited act that is generous to the other person.
Right. And because of that, I think people typically might overlook that and not realize that for some people that is a very powerful message of love. With it, because you think, well, that's just a chore, why don't we just do that with it? But to someone that means everything.
Wow, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Yeah, I had a long day, a big meeting, or I was on the road, or thank you. That just is big. But again, it's about stopping to be in tune, whether it's what the words are that somebody needs to hear, what kind of touch they need, or what the service is that you can offer. You've got to kind of notice, and you've got to be in tune with that person.
To be aware of it and care about doing that.
To be a good match. Even if you're speaking their language, you need to be able to make it a good connection. So another language would be receiving gifts. Now, when we're talking about gifts, they don't have to be big, materialistic, huge
People
symbols.
can mistake this and think, oh, I'm going to go out and buy something every week for the other person. No.
This is a token. This could be I picked up this magazine for you on knitting because I know that you like it, and it was on, or dogs, or your hobby, or woodworking, because I was thinking of you, and I thought you might like it.
Yes.
Or
Or I saw this tool the other day, and I know you've been talking about it. I got it for you.
right, or I was passing the bakery, and the car pulled in, and I got pastries for dessert, you know, because I know you like lemon tarts or something. It doesn't have to be expensive.
Exactly.
And
Right.
and for a lot of people, it can't be expensive. It could
It can be even something that one party makes for the other,
right.
which has a special meaning. Oh, you did this for me, and
Yeah.
yes. So it's a very important way. It can be a personal item. Maybe you've noticed your partner has noticed a particular article of clothing or jewelry that he or she would never indulge in and buy for himself or herself. And you just suddenly show up with it and say, I know you spotted this and you liked it. I wanted you to have it.
Right. I got you some warm hiking socks or a new tie or
Yes.
whatever. Yeah. It
So
doesn't take
those
a
are
lot.
the ways in which
You can,
up to we haven't done the quality
we haven't done the
time.
quality time now. So I think this is huge personally. This would be on the top of my list. Yeah. Quality time. Wow. This is showing up, being present, and putting away the other distractions and saying, I care about you enough to be totally with you right now. I want to understand you. I want to hear you. I want to be curious. I want to go to a deeper place than our transactional life together, like who's doing what when. You are important.
Yeah. And in this day and age, this is a hard one to do.
But I think it's so key.
It's so important with our phones, our TVs, and everything, our time on the internet. We just tend to be there and maybe noticing the other person, but we're not really with them in the moment, in that quality time. So if that it happens to be the love language of one of the partners, and they never feel or rarely feel that the other party is paying attention to them, or if it's only done in conjunction with being on the phone or watching TV, again, the love tank's going to empty out.
Or while they're doing something else. Multitasking. We are such a society of multitasking right now. Like, yeah,
Yes.
I can listen to you and your day and your concerns while I'm doing whatever else, you know, flipping through the mail for the day, or like, but you can't really. You can't. You've got to, there's a different quality
Right.
of connection there. And I think, I don't know what Gary Chapman would think, but I think that it feeds your ability to do all of these other things.
Yes.
Because you're really showing up and connecting. I'm going to understand what kind of gift you might like. I'm going to know what to do for you. I'm going to know what kind of physical connection you want, and I'm going to know what words.
Right.
You know.
In quality time, it implies listening to the other party.
Yeah.
So as you say, that influences
Everything
all
else.
the others.
So,
Yes.
I mean, we haven't done the research. We didn't write the book. He did, but I'm just putting my spin on there that would be mine.
Sure.
So, so many of us have more than one of these expressions. We might have a preference. We might have a first choice. So, and you wanted to go to both of them?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And we might rank them. Just one. This was actually the way one of the
An actual
people
subject,
in
yes.
Gary Chapman's
So
research ranked.
This male took the survey, and from that survey, it was determined that these were the love needs in priority for this particular man. So you can see that in terms of we don't know without talking to the actual person how much more physical touch means than quality time, say. They may be very close, or there may be a significant difference. So that again would come from a discussion between the couple, but at least we know that this one is number one. This is the most powerful avenue
for that particular subject,
person.
yeah.
Yes.
There's also, you have said in your other readings about John Gottman, he talks about having a healthy ratio between
Right.
positive affirmations, whether it's through gifts or service or words or time, and those times when we're a little critical. And
So the frequency of this has to be noticed as well. So it might be that, yes, once a month there's some physical touch with it, but that doesn't do it for me. With it, and there may be many moments of criticism or ridicule, so forth. So I'm feeling pretty low in terms of my love tank. But Gottman, in his research with couples, has shown that we actually need a ratio of 5 of these expressions of love, whichever one is our language modality, 5 of these to every one criticism or something that hurts us or something that makes us feel isolated in the
or
relationship.
unappreciated
Or unappreciated, yes. A 5-to-1 ratio.
I'm not sure
So
about the accounting of that, yeah.
in addition then to finding out with our partner, are we tapping into their particular love language that means the most to them, but are we also doing it frequently enough for it to register and keep that tank filled?
Yeah, so you got to make sure you're on the right channel and that you've got the balance.
Right.
And that's hard sometimes when you're feeling depleted as well. If you've got 2 people who are depleted and not connecting, you just have to kind of stop and take notice and say, all right, I'm going to start.
Yes. And we've mentioned in previous shows that one of the most basic needs that all human beings have is the need to be loved. And therefore, the need for paying attention to this, because if that need is not met, as human beings, we are either going to be very hurting, we're not going to be as fulfilled and available to be the person we could be, or we may become quite resentful and angry, which shows up in our interactions with other people as well.
Right, and we're talking about intimate relationships here.
Correct. Yes.
But I think that these languages are certain to be present in our friendships and in
with our children.
Our children, and with
It's
other.
not just with a couple, though we're focusing on that today.
We want to be appreciated. We want to be noticed. We want people to stop what they're doing to spend time with us. We may need physical touch. I know that sometimes the elderly and people who live alone are lacking that sense of well-being because they don't hear other spoken word. They don't have that physical touch. And we kind of need all of these things.
Absolutely. We literally can become ill if we don't have that.
So how do we know what our language is? You can specifically have this conversation with a friend or partner or child. But since we're talking about intimate relationships, think about what you like to hear, and what bothers you. What are the source of conflict all the time?
What does your
What's
partner
pushing your
do?
buttons?
Yeah, that pushes your buttons,
Yeah,
or causes you distress, or causes you to think or question, do they really love me? And identify what those are. Pay attention to that.
What are you most asking for when you say you never? What is that? You never what? You never hold me.
And the role
you
that
never,
you were playing last time was you never help me out with the chores, or you let me do everything. Well, that lets me know that acts of service
would be
are
helpful.
pretty important to you. Yeah.
Or also acknowledging, showing me through words of appreciation that if you're not going to do it for me or with me, at least you're acknowledging that I'm doing it, appreciating it, and you've put down the newspaper long enough, give me quality time to even talk.
Yes.
So it's possible that couples are going to have different priorities up there. Again, through his research, this is one of the matchups.
This is an actual couple. Yes. And so the male and the female, again, took the survey to determine what their particular love languages were. And one of the things that stands out immediately when you look at the comparison of the two is the number one
Is number 5
modality
here.
for
We've got
a love expression for the male is the very least important to
for
the
the female.
female. And again, that's important not to treat that with criticism.
No, it just
when
is.
Relationships can still thrive when this is not the top priority, when each partner recognizes that and attempts to meet that need in some way. So that's the first thing we notice. But then another thing that becomes clear here is as they are listed, and again, we don't know exactly the space between or the importance between this one and this one until we talk to the parties. But when you look at this, here's words of appreciation as the top modality for the female, and words of affirmation number 3.
So it's
the
not
male.
so far down the
So it may
ranking.
not be that far apart, which means that these two methods might be very commonplace for the two of them and very repetitive, that they can reassure each other this way, and then occasionally jump to the one that really is most important. So we have quality time that seem to be a fair match here, and acts of affirmation, and even acts of service is not that far down, but certainly receiving gifts
Gifts
for
is
the
not
male
important.
is not going to cut it,
Right.
and physical touch alone for the female is not going
Not
to
gonna
cut it.
So I think that a couple could certainly sit down and talk about these 5 different languages and say, how would you rank them?
Sure.
But if you're not comfortable with that, or if it feels too packaged, I think you can still, through some of the other skills that we've talked about, through the I message and through reflective listening, kind of tease it out. Because if you're not getting your needs met, you could still say, when such and such happens, this is how I feel. And you can
Right.
still communicate your
You could
needs.
identify that for yourself, or when
Like-
you do these things or say these things, I really feel good about myself.
Great. You know, when I hear
it
you.
really draws me to you
Yeah.
with it. And when I hear these things, I go the opposite
Right.
way. So identifying those really can be very helpful. And in sitting down to do that, of course, you're
Offering quality time, yeah.
Yes.
But, and I think you've touched on something, maybe it is even in knowing yourself and identifying in a positive way, kind of as you're identifying for you and your partner, when you do this, I appreciate it.
Yes.
So kind of doing that, you're asking and you're giving positive reinforcement for a behavior that you want to see more often.
Right.
So,
We
you
even
know,
see that, I think, in mediation when the parties identify what they're most concerned with, and the
It's
other party
usually a disconnect.
shows an attempt to try
Yeah.
to, okay, if that's important to you, the way I talk to you, and I'll change it to this. The very act of making that effort to do what the other party says is important to them is a sign of caring.
right.
So that process just by itself begins to bond the two people together a little bit more.
So we can revert back to some of the skills in order to identify this and to communicate that to our partner. I think you've got to know yourself first and maybe take an inventory for yourself
Right.
so that you can ask for what you need.
And if you're not familiar enough with yourself, if that's difficult for you to do, again, you can ask the other party, what do you think from the way I behave? What do you think is most important to me? What do I respond to, do you think? And help that way. So one of the things I thought we could do with the limited time we have left is last time when we did that role play,
Yeah.
where you were playing the wife and I was playing the husband, and you were just so upset with me for
you-
not helping out, sitting there reading my magazine when I came home because I
even
wanted to
noticing.
relax,
Yeah.
and paying no attention to the fact, at least on the surface, that you had to come home from work and start making dinner too, and therefore the conversation turned into an attack.
Snipes,
Snipes,
sarcasm, yeah.
Right. And
Because I
that-
was trying to be appreciated. I wanted this. I wanted words of appreciation or help, but I didn't ask for it that way. I just kind of
Right.
attacked.
So we talked then about different communication techniques, but I'm looking at that situation now and saying if these were the love languages of that particular couple that we were playing, how might she have approached the husband knowing his love language was physical touch, and how might he have approached her and responded to her knowing that her love language was words of affirmation?
She could have come over and taken his hand, or
just
given him a hug,
yeah,
or
come up behind him and put her hands on his shoulders,
embraced him,
massaged him a little bit. Again, not
said,
in a manipulative way, but just in a way of letting him know, I care about you.
I care.
And then say at that time, I think as you had modeled, is this a time that I can share something with you
that's been
that
on
is
my
bothering
mind?
me?
Yeah. But in
Yeah.
a reassuring way, because he's not threatened, he's not going to get defensive.
Right, he's already feeling the reassurance
that I
through
cared
physical
for.
touch that I care about you, you're important to me, even if I'm upset with you about something.
Yeah, I have something hard to say, but it's because I care about us that I want to talk about it.
Correct. And he could also model this if that obviously, if she's so concerned about doing things around the house and being recognized for it, and he knows, oh, that sounds like words of affirmation with it. If he were to say something like, I do appreciate it when I come home and the house is neat, or you start making a wonderful meal. I guess I don't tell you as much as I should how much that does mean to me. I do notice it.
I think sometimes we think that it's so obvious that the other person notices what I'm doing or what I'm saying or how I'm behaving.
Yeah,
but
we hear people
have to
say
be
it.
Explicit.
Of course I love you. And then they say what? And the other person says, huh?
How?
That's supposed
How
to
do I
mean
know
you
that?
love me?
Yeah. What evidence have you offered of that? Or you're giving and giving and giving exactly what you need, but not what the other person needs.
Right.
And that
The
brings
love
us back.
languages don't match.
Yeah. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of the Relationship Toolbox and can apply some of the messages that we've offered in your relationship. If you want further information about the great research of Gary Chapman or John Gottman, they are available on the internet, and you could search that out and do some deeper reading.
So that concludes our show for today. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next time.